Welcome back to another episode of What Are You Made Of with your boy, the unstoppable Mike C-Roc. You can be unstoppable too. Just go get the Rocket Fuel book, Convert Setbacks, Become Unstoppable. It's available now anywhere books are sold, most likely Amazon, or my website, mikecroc.com/book. Go check it out. Start thinking unstoppable, becoming unstoppable. I want you a part of this with me. Guys, today, first of all, thank you for listening. But today I have a wonderful guest. I met him through our friend Greg Reed. I was in a mastermind with Greg, and he's friends with Brian, and he brought Brian in to talk to us. And I'm like, you know what? He fits this show. What are you made of? Perfectly. So I decided to bring Brian in. Brian Smith is the founder of the world famous UGG Australia brand. Graduated in 1978 as a chartered accountant in Australia, Brian came to California looking for the next big opportunity to bring back to Australia. And while studying at UCLA Graduate School of Management, he observed that there was no sheepskin footwear in the U.S. With only $500 in capital, he imported boot samples and over the next 17 years built the UGG Australia brand into a multi-million-dollar international enterprise. He did sell it in 1995, and the brand has continued to grow to exceed $1 billion in annual sales for the past 6 years. He is one of the most sought-after international speakers, and that's why I brought him here onto this show. I'm not going to read any more bio because I wanted you to get into your story. But guys, if you're listening to this, chances are you, your wife, your husband even, or your kids have probably worn UGG boots. And that's why I love to bring Brian on the show to hear his story. Brian, welcome to the show.
Hey, Mike, thanks for having me, buddy. It's going to be fun.
Yeah, so I have a tradition of asking the same question every time to every guest, and that is, what are you made of, Brian?
Oh, boy. Wow. In this context, I guess I'm probably the world's greatest optimist. And that's the only reason I've survived in this business as long as I have, and the various businesses that I have had, because I always somehow find the way out of a situation that's gone bad where it's positive. And I'm not saying it's a great asset to have. Sometimes I should have walked away, but I guess I just don't give up, number one, and I look for the positive in every situation, number two.
I love that. I want to ask you about that though. Optimism. Is there some times where you should be a little pessimistic and understanding like what you're about to get into could have these things happen so that you can prepare?
Yeah, I've gone into businesses that my inner being, my gut told me, don't go into it, get out of it. And I've counteracted that and gone into it. And it's been painful and very financially hurtful. So there are times when you've got to listen to yourself in the negative and go along with it. But overall, I think if you believe in something and you have a gut feel that in your heart you can make this work, then it's worth fighting for. And don't worry about the details, just get started, because all of the details begin to look after themselves once you've got a positive direction. So yeah, overall, be cautious, but chase your heart and your dreams.
And now, before we get into your story, I want to ask you this, because you just said this several times. You're basically stubborn. Would you agree with that?
Yeah, I'd say so, yeah.
And so stubborn, I like to look up definitions, and stubborn in the dictionary, there's two words that really light me up, and it's perversely unyielding. Not just
Wow.
unyielding is powerful enough, right? But
Yeah.
perversely unyielding. And some people think of stubborn as a bad thing, but really it's not the wrong thing when it's on the right thing, right?
If you're on the right track, it's what there's so many times where I could have given up. I'd say 4 to 5. I wrote that book, The Birth of a Brand, and I surprised myself going through it how many times I could have given up and almost did give up. But something said, no, these boots are all over Australia. I'm just going to hang in there and wait till I can get them all over America.
Yeah. So that reminds me of myself. Like I have a message to share with people, and I'm sharing it with hundreds of thousands of people, but I want to go to hundreds of millions of people. And I have
Right.
a problem with patience.
Yeah.
I feel like my window is shortening every day that goes by to make the impact that I want to impact.
Yeah.
But you got to remember that, like you said, it's just believe in it and my mom used to tell me, stick to your guns, stick to your
Yeah.
guns.
Well, as far as impatience goes, the theme of my book, which is called The Birth of a Brand, the theme of that is that you can't give birth to adults. You have to conceive something, give birth.
Love that.
Like for me, giving birth was buying 6 pairs of samples of boots from Australia. And then every business just lies there, and it lies there just like an infant, and you got to keep feeding it, changing the diapers, feeding it. And eventually, after what seems like forever, it'll start toddling. And that's when, your first true believers are talking about you, and they're buying your products. And that quickly goes into the youth phase, where it's, the sales and marketing's working, the accounting and everything is working, the warehouse and shipping is working, the purchasing is all great. And you can run a $25-30 million business in that youth phase. But if it's a really great product or great service, and this is where you're talking hundreds of millions, right? If you get to that stage, you're in the teenage phase, and it's so dangerous. Because do you remember when you wanted to be in every party in town?
Mm-hmm.
As a teenager?
Yeah,
well, it's the same in business. You want to be in every major trade show. You want to be in every mass retailer, and it can kill you so fast by going too fast in those directions. But eventually it becomes mature. And so the theme of that, I summarized it in my book. About this is all about impatience, right? The quickest way for a tadpole to become a frog is live every day happily as a tadpole.
I love that, man. You
Right?
spoke to me those two things. You can't give birth to an adult,
Right.
and the quickest way to become a frog is live every day happily as a tadpole. That's that speaks to me today. You know that, right?
Good. Well, that tadpole one is, I'll come back to a group after a year when I, spoke to them, and the only thing they remember is the tadpole quote, because it's so profound. You can't accelerate anything you do faster than the world's ready to take it on.
Right. Yeah, I love that, man. And the other thing you said was commit first, figure the rest out later, in other words.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You've heard that statement that when you start out on a path, the universe will conspire to work with you. You heard? Yeah, it's ancient. It's thousands of years old. Well, how I interpret that is that the universe is absolutely got everything you could possibly want already in existence, right? But if you don't have a direction, you're not going to see it. Now, Mike, when's the last time you saw an advertisement for a refrigerator?
I haven't seen one in a long time. I haven't paid attention. Yeah.
But if you needed a refrigerator this weekend, you would start seeing ads for refrigerators. You'd be driving down the street, looking in windows, there'd be refrigerators. You'd be at Starbucks and the classified newspapers open at ads for refrigerators. They'd be everywhere. They already are. They're existing right now everywhere. But if you're not starting out where you don't have an interest in refrigerators, you're never going to see it. And that's the same with every business. Once you start, all the things you need will start dropping in to place. You'll go, oh, I could use that. Oh, I spoke to him. He referred me to this. Oh my God, I could use that. And so all of the stuff that already exists in the universe will start piling up in front of you. And that's how you grow. You just start taking advantage of all of this stuff that already is. And
you being stubborn, okay? You being admittedly stubborn. Did you learn that from experience, or did you hear it from someone first and then experience it?
No, I've just learned that over the years. As long as you're in motion, shit will start happening for you. It's uncanny. It's one of that's why that saying's been around 2,000-3,000 years. It is so true. The universe really conspires to work with you.
Now, I remember you telling the story when we were in Greg's call about the surfers, and the surfers are the ones that liked those kind of boots, right?
Yeah.
Can you go into that and tell me about that?
Sure. That was like, I'd been struggling with, I thought because every Australian owns a pair of sheepskin boots, I thought it'd be automatic in America, but it really wasn't. Americans don't understand sheepskin. And I was, posing these models, advertising with models on the rocks at the beach, and perfect hair and clothing and everything. And sales were like $5,000 the first year. And so I got, new models and a more expensive photographer and put them on the rocks at Wind and Sea. And, the boots were like the major part of the ad. And, the sales next year, $10,000. And I was getting ready to give up because it should have been way, way better. And after about the fourth year, I was deciding, should I stay in business or give up? And I was having a beer with one of my surf shop retailers, and I was explaining this dilemma, and he goes, "Oh, shut up, Brian." And he calls out back to these little 12, 13-year-old grommets, and he says, "Hey, you guys, what do you think of UGG boots?" And every one of them just went, "Oh man, those Uggs, they're so fake. Have you seen those ads? Those models, they can't surf." And like instantly I realized I'm sending the wrong message to my target market. And I was going after surfers because so many surfers had been to Australia and brought boots back. And so in that surf community, it was pretty well known. And so instead of hiring new photographers, I called up a buddy who was running a Scholastic Surf Association up in Orange County. I said, "Pete, you got any young kids who are going to turn pro soon?" And he gave me these two guys, Mike Parsons and Ted Robinson. And so I just went surfing with them. I went to Black's Beach in La Jolla, and I went to Trestles up in San Onofre. And all I did was just with my Canon Sure Shot, just shot photos of us going down to the beach. And I ran those ads the next, fall, October. And sales for that season went to $200,000, right? From 20, And it was like, oh my God, I've unlocked, I've figured out what marketing and advertising is. Because in these photos, the boots were imperceptible. You could hardly see the boots in the ads, which was my product. But I learned you never advertise your product. You advertise the feeling or the emotion or the benefits or whatever it is that's going to make these people want to buy your product. And I knew that when I ran these ads, every little kid in America who surfs would die to be walking down that track to Black's Beach, or they would die to be walking with Mike Parsons down to Trestles,
Yeah.
And that emotion was so powerful that it created like a cult in Southern California. If you were at school as a teenager and you didn't have a pair of Uggs, you were just not cool, And because the ads were so good that there were a few competitors came in the market, and the kids ridiculed them at school, like, "Oh, you got fake Uggs. And so it sort of policed this amazing loyalty of pride of ownership. And it was all due to that, that recognition that you have to identify with the market that you're selling to.
Yeah. I mean, I'm in Maryland and I've heard fake Uggs before.
Yeah,
Like I've heard that. That's so
that's
funny.
right.
That's wild. So can you explain to me why surfers in a warm climate would want to wear a boot, and especially sheepskin?
Yeah, and this comes back to how Americans didn't understand sheepskin, right? That in Australia, you can't rip a sheepskin, no matter how strong you are. You can't rip it. You can get it wet, and it still retains the insulation properties. So you can have wet boots on in it's 40 degrees outside, and your feet are still warm. And when they're dry, it wicks air out, so you can never sweat in them. So it can be 100 degrees out, and your feet are just foot temperature, and all the rest of the heat wicks out, right? So Americans didn't know that. They think it's delicate. You can't get it wet. You can't wash them. There's, you can't get mud and slush on them. And so the surfers knew that when you get out of the surf, I mean, in the winter, the water's freezing. It's in the 57, 58, and after 2 hours of that, your feet and toes are numb, You can come out and just dust the sand off and put these UGG boots on, and within 10, 15 minutes, your feet are warm and dry because it's wicked all the water out,
So I know that. I never knew that about them.
Yeah, that's the original reason I went after the surf market. Plus the surf market's always the leading edge of products anyway. Surfing and skate. They're the trend leaders worldwide.
Now, how old were you when you were going through this? Like when you first launched?
I just turned 30 when I came to America. I'd spent 10 years trying to graduate as a chartered accountant, like a CPA. And the day I graduated is the day I quit and said, I hate accounting. I want to get into a business for myself. And so I started thinking, you know, what should I do? And it came to me in this little meditation that all the big trends were coming out of California, like Levi jeans and waterbeds and, you know, skate brands and surf brands. And so I just said, I'm going to California. I'm going to find the next big thing and bring it back to Australia. I never planned on staying.
Wow, man. And then, so were you married at the time?
No, single. Yeah,
So,
but
so how did that change your dating life when UGG started to come out and you started to be the guy?
well, I wish it was like that. But after 5 years, like nobody still heard of him because that was when I first started doing those surf ads,
Yeah.
right? And then after it started to catch on, man, I was so busy trying to keep the business going. I really didn't do a lot of dating, you know.
Yeah.
My focus just wasn't there. But
Did they eventually go into fashion shows or no?
yeah, it took a while, but like I used that same theme of the young pros to get into snowboarding, and then from there we got like my biggest dilemma was shit in Chicago, Minnesota, back east, you know, what are they doing? What are the kids doing in the winter? You know, I had no idea because they certainly weren't surfing and they don't read surf magazines, right? So, and I was out working with a rep one day we caught in a sporting goods store and I saw this big hockey section and I went, shit, you know, do kids play hockey here? You know, and they go, oh my God, you can't even get rink time, you know? And so I started advertising to the hockey moms because the moms have to sit in the rinks with the, you know, waiting for the kids and everything, and it's 40 degrees, and the kids have to change, you know, shoes to get there and put the skates on and everything. And so I developed this Hockey Mum of the Week program with, you know, hockey magazines, and it just took off like crazy. So, and then the moms, they're all buying boots for the kids and going, wait a minute, these are pretty damn good boots, you know? So they started buying them for their daughters. And then the female side of it started to catch on. And then, you know, after that, I realized, oh my God, I can't be in all these niches. I want an overall sort of image. So I created casual comfort as the image and decided to advertise that. And that was what really took it out to the female market.
Gotcha. And then that's when it really exploded.
Yeah, it did. Well, two things happened. One is that I did this PR campaign and I sort of, you know, set it all up properly with this company in Boston. And we put a press kit together and I wanted to get on the front page of the lifestyle section in USA Today, because that to me was like the fashion
I remember.
Bible. And so I made an appointment with the girl who was a fashion editor for this Wednesday at 3:00, right? And so we left Boston and went to New York and New Jersey and, you know, a couple of places on the way over to Chicago and practiced the pitch. It was about 45-minute pitch, you know, with a beautiful press kit and everything. And we got to the the fashion editor's office at 5 to 3, and she comes running out and goes, "Oh, Brian, I'm so sorry. I've double booked. I have to be on a conference call at 3. I've got 5 minutes." And I just went, "Oh shit," you know. So I knew I couldn't give that presentation. So
Setback.
as an entrepreneur, you have to sort of pivot when you hit a wall like that. And so I thought, I reached into my briefcase and there was this tatty old folder that I had where I'd for years been throwing in just photographs of all of these celebrities. And I had, Tom Petty and Neil Young and Sting and, anyway, a whole bunch of celebrities from Hollywood. And then I flicked I showed her this one of Pamela Anderson on the beach, with a red swimsuit. And I quickly flicked by that and show her Heather Locklear, because nobody wears Ugg boots on the beach in a red swimsuit, right?
Right.
So she goes, go back. What was that? And she pulled out this advertisement. It was like from a tabloid in London someone had sent me. And she wrote down the name of the photographer and And she said, "Do you have a press kit?" Yeah. She said, "Got to go." And it was like 4 minutes it took, right? And I just knew we blew it. It cost about $50,000 to put that campaign together. And so the next day I was in O'Hare Airport going back to San Diego, and I bought a coffee in the USA Today, and I was expecting nothing, because I mean, I'd just seen it like 10 hours beforehand, right? And I get to the lifestyle section, and there's a photo of Pamela Anderson and this little blurb, and then the inside page was nothing but sheepskin and shearling and all of the work that I did, all the products that I had, all my competitors, which really pissed me off, because I didn't, I'd done all the work, and here they were just sort of getting on it. And by the time I got back to San Diego, I found out that the phones hadn't stopped all day from retailers wanting to know how they could buy the product, and consumers wanting to know where the hell is there a store in my area.
Wow.
And the other weird thing is, remember I mentioned the competitors?
Yeah.
Well, I've been trying to get into all the big mall stores, the Nordstroms and the really big high-end retailers, and I kept getting shut out for year after year. This is like 12, 13 years into the business. And they all started calling. And I'm going, you weren't interested last month. What's the difference? He says, well, before you were just an item, like an UGG boot. But now there's a whole shearling category out there, and you're the leader of the category. And so we want to make sure we get in on the category, right? So suddenly it opened up, me thinking I was fearful of all the competitors getting on my coattails. They couldn't get in because they weren't the leader of the category.
Yep.
And so this opened up a whole new range. Business almost doubled the following year because of that.
Wow. Something that reminds me of this is that you said 12 to 13 years and you've been trying and trying. Like there's times where I'll invite somebody on my show or try to get on someone else's show and they'll say no for whatever reason, right? Well, I play this game in my mind where my goal is to get them to want to be on my show or me be on their show, and I can have the opportunity to say, no, thank you. Now that might be bad. I don't know, but that's just the game I play with myself. And that reminded me of that. So now Uggs is Uggs. You sold the business. From there, like, what do you do? And how do you go about doing your next thing? Cause you're not the type of person to just sit back. I know that.
No. And that again is a bad thing. I could have retired and just been living on the beach in anywhere for the rest of my life, but I am very entrepreneurial. I started a precast concrete business because I invented a lightweight concrete that was half the weight of regular concrete but still had structural strength, and I made a precast concrete wall business out of that and did really, really well for about 10 years. And then the recession of 2009 and 10 just wiped that out because construction stopped completely. And that's when I wrote the book about the birth of a brand. And that led me to the stage because everybody's saying, man, this is fantastic. You got to get on stage. And so I started going on stage speaking, which is something I really love doing. So if any of you in the audience belong to an organization that would like to have a really killer presentation, it's an hour more of what we're talking about. It's lots and lots of stories, and I've come to really love speaking. And so fast forward to 2019 and 2020, and suddenly you can't gather anywhere in a group. So my whole speaking career just got wiped out, and I had a ton of bookings going into 2020, and just they became useless,
Yeah.
But it's starting to pick up now. I'm starting to get people interested in hiring me, and the people are talking about June, July, August. They're going to gather again, so I'm hopeful it'll pick up again.
But, by the way, Brian, I want to go back for 1 second because I had a question I want to ask you on the sale and the exit of the business. Right. How did you know when it was the right time to do that?
Well, I'd been in business 18 years, right? And I finally had everything working, and it got to that youth stage where everything was clicking. And I we just introduced all these new colors in the new season. It was, I think, 1994. And it was just going off the charts with popularity. We had 30 or 40 sales reps all across the country. And we just done like 14 million in sales. And it looked like it was going to be 20 to 25 million coming up. And I knew I didn't have the ability to finance that. Just because of my history with the banks, they always saw it as a fad. They never saw it as an ongoing business, And so I knew I was in trouble and might not be able to deliver. So I'm going to backtrack. Remember when I was starting out in those $5,000 days and $10,000, my biggest retail outlet was my van at Malibu Beach, because I was surfing there every day. And I had all the product in the back of the van, and I used to just open up. So I had a little retail store going there in the parking lot. And I did that for a couple of years, and it was, really famous. And just parking spaces up was this guy, Doug Otto, who had these neoprene sandals, and they were really thick. They were pink, yellow, and pink neoprene. And he called them triple deckers, right? And he went on, we crisscrossed each other on the road all the time. We would see each other in surf shops and stuff. And he started licensing other products. And eventually he licensed a sandal called Tiva. And when the outdoor market took off in the early 80s, Tiva went with it. And Doug took his company public just on the strength of that one product. And anyway, I knew he was sitting around with $25-30 million in the bank. And so I fast forward now, I'm on the way to this big trade show in Atlanta called the Super Show. It's a big athletic sportswear show. And way up the other end of the baggage claim, I saw Doug, and now all the way over on the plane, I'm trying to figure out how can I get financing for next year? And I saw Doug and I got goosebumps, and I went, oh my God, it's perfect. He dies every winter, and our business died every summer. And he's got the cash, and he's often showed he wanted to try and get into sheepskin, And so I walked up to him and we just high-fived, and I said, Doug, if ever we're going to do this, now's the time. And we had the accountants talking to each other that afternoon. And, 7 or 8 months later, we closed on the transaction, and we sold it out for cash plus some royalties going forward. And it was just a brilliant deal for me, because I would have, the whole company would have gone under had I not been able to finance it. Wow. And it was just remember the universe, man? It's always there waiting in your face if you can recognize it.
You asked like, what, how can I get financing? Bang, there's Doug.
Exactly. It literally is that reliable.
That's wonderful. Well, look, I'd like to talk to you all day, but obviously can't. So what I want to do is ask you what the rocket fuel concept has meant to you, which is to turn all setbacks into rocket fuel for your future.
Yeah. Well, one of my greatest sayings is that your most disappointing disappointments will always become your greatest blessings. Right now, I ask from the stage, put up your hand if something happened in the past year at the time you thought was a huge disaster, and now you look back and think, thank God that happened. I tell you, 80 to 90% of people put their hand up. And so having rocket fuel is being, having a setback is like filling the tanks full of fuel for the next push. And that to me is how I
love it. That's well said. Well said.
Yeah.
We're going to end on that one. Brian, how can my audience engage with you or reach out to you if they want you to speak or?
Sure. My speaking website is uggfounder.com. That's uggfounder.com. Or email is brian@briansmithspeaker.com. Either way. But yeah, if you contact me through the website or through that email, I'd love to come speak to your group. That would be fabulous.
Well, Brian, I want to thank you so much for joining me and saying yes right away when I asked you. That means the world to me, and I appreciate you coming on and sharing with me and my audience. And if there's anything I could ever do for you, please don't hesitate to reach out, because you have equity with your boy C-Roc now.
Thank you, my friend. Good luck to everybody.
Thank you very much, Brian. You guys have been listening to the What Are You Made Of podcast with your boy, Mike C-Roc. Until next time, guys, Be unstoppable.